Coming to the defense of the Philippines so far following the China Coast Guard's use of a military-grade laser on the BRP Malapascua on Ayungin Shoal. The Marcos administration immediately acting on that by filing a new diplomatic protest against Beijing and summoning the Chinese ambassador to Malacañang. Maritime security experts say it's time to put an end to the hostile threats as the Philippines defends its territory. Good evening, I'm Pia Hontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual.
Yes, I believe they can be made liable because under UNCLOS, the Coast Guards of the two countries even have a hotline of their own, supposedly, which was announced back in 2017. So there is absolutely no justification for this kind of threatening moves, no?
Our guests tonight, the Philippine Coast Guard's advisor of the Commandant for Maritime Security, Commodore J. Tariela, joining us via Zoom, and also joining us on the show again, just like last week, retired Navy Rear Admiral Romel Ong, and here in the studio, our senior correspondent, David Santos. Hi, David. And to Commodore Tariela and Rear Admiral Ong, thank you very much for being with us. And Rear Admiral Ong, last week pa lang, nag-uusap na tayo about China, and here we go again. Now we're talking about China tonight. Yeah. So, well, let's begin with this Commodore Tariela and Rear Admiral Ong and David Santos here. So this is the second incident so far in Ayungin Shoal, October or November 2021, no, David? Itong the Chinese Coast Guard water cannoned a resupply vessel that was on its way, that was headed to the BRP Madre, that had been run aground in Ayungin. And then this February 6, another Chinese Coast Guard vessel pointing a military-grade laser on the BRP Malapascua. The Malapascua, again, also heading to or having already headed from the BRP Sierra Madre. So is it correct to say that what the Chinese Coast Guard is trying to do is to derail and delay supply missions, resupply missions, and rotation missions, meaning pinapalitan yung mga sundalong nakadestino doon sa BRP Sierra Madre? And if that is the case, what is the end goal, Commodore Tariela?
Well, for the Philippine Coast Guard, Ms. Pia, our mission objective is to protect the interests of our nation and also to support the armed forces of the Philippines for sustaining the rotation of our personnel and their supply of our troops in BRP Sierra Madre. If I'm going to be asked what is the interest of the Chinese government in disallowing government vessels from supporting this water mission, their main objective really was for us to prevent in transporting supplies that would enforce the structure of the vessel. No? Their main objective really is to prevent us from constantly supporting our troops in maintaining our presence in Ayungin Shoal.
So then, what is the end goal then? If they make it difficult to resupply the BRP Sierra Madre or to yung palitan yung mga tropa na nakadestino doon, what would be the end goal, Rear Admiral Ong? Ano yung gusto nilang, in other words, ano yung gusto nilang mangyari?
Okay, siguro the best way to describe what the Chinese are doing, it's a quasi-blockade. Okay, it's a quasi-blockade. I'm not going to use the exact legal definition of blockade because ang logical definition would be it's an act of war. So hindi yun. So it's a quasi-blockade. I think the interest there would be to prevent us, of course, as Commodore Tariela said, to prevent us from having access and to resupply yung Sierra Madre. But ang ultimate goal nun is for them to take over the shoal.
Right. Okay. And they can only take over the shoal if... Yes, Rear Admiral Ong. They can only take over the shoal kung wala yung BRP Sierra Madre doon. Hindi po ba? Because I remember, if I'm not mistaken, David can correct me if I'm wrong, in late 2021, Wasn't there a call from the Chinese side, from Beijing, to remove the BRP Sierra Madre from Ayungin Shoal?
Yeah. Yes. The Sierra Madre is living on borrowed time kasi you can see the ship already, it's rusting. Eventually, it's decrepit, it will just buckle down. So ang ano rito is we're playing for time. But time is against us actually kasi pag gumuho yan, yung Sierra Madre, then we lose our rationale for being in that shoal in the first place. They can at the worst I can see a scenario na sabihin nila they're going to rescue our sailors na nakadeploy diyan. And that would be the premise for a takeover of the shoal.
David Santos here in the studio. David, why is it important that we resupply and retool and post new people on the BRP Sierra Madre? And what would China's end goal be here? No, every time they do a blockade, every time they try to stop us from resupplying the Sierra Madre.
Well, like what Rear Admiral Ong and Commodore Tariel were saying, basically, ang piniprevent ng China is that we reinforce our stake, our interest there, because this is a military outpost. Yeah, this is a commissioned Navy ship. This is
it's not, in other words, hindi lang siya nabubulok na barko.
Exactly.
It is, and that's why it is still commissioned. No, hindi pa siya decommissioned, right? Okay.
And then that's a very distant deployment. Kaya we had to constantly send resupply and rotation of personnel because the sheer distance ng outpost na yon constantly needs the support both of the armed forces as well as the Philippine Coast Guard.
I remember I asked General Andy Santino, then and now Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, back in November 2021 on the Generals 2.0, if are we going to remove the BRP Sierra Madre? And he said very clearly, no, we're not removing the BRP Sierra Madre. We need it there, right? We need it to stay there.
Yeah, because basically ang Sierra Madre, virtually it symbolizes our stake there. I mean, once you remove that, para mo na rin inalisan tayo ng symbolic structure that, really, parang yun ang nagpapako ng ating claim, rather, no, not claim, our stake there, our interest there. So, pag inalis mo yan, parang you're just, parang pwedeng mangyari sa Mischief Reef at pwedeng nangyayari ngayon sa Scarborough Shoal na pwede na namang i-take over ng...
Well, if that is the case, if yan ang gusto ng China, then why don't they point the laser halimbawa at the Sierra Madre? Why don't they water cannon the Sierra Madre? Bakit ang ginagawa nila, yun ang ginagawa nila doon sa Coast Guard vessel or sa, like in October, November 2021, yun ginawa nila sa isang fishing vessel, right? Why don't they do that directly to the Sierra Madre? What are they trying to avoid?
Siguro sa 2021 incident, Pia, if you recall, ang tinarget nila doon yung civilian fisherman boat na nagdadala ng supply sa Ayungin Shoal. Back then, hindi pa talaga malinaw kung ano yung, if they do something. Una, ang malaking issue dito, Pia, is if you recall, in both instances, the U.S. government and the U.S. military, U.S. Defense, Department of Defense, reaffirming their obligations under the Mutual Defense Treaty. Sabi
Because an attack on a commissioned vessel
is an attack on them also, so they will come to our defense. So if you recall, yung pag-atake sa isang civilian ship back then, hindi pa malinaw kung it will be covered under the NDT. But now, after that particular incident, malinaw na malinaw sinasabi ng US government, ng US Defense, that any armed attack, armed attack, the term is armed attack, very specific sila doon, on a public vessel, aircraft, and now even a Coast Guard, will trigger the mechanisms under the Mutual Defense Treaty.
Okay, keywords, of course, public vessel, and then armed attack, a laser is considered a weapon, no?
Although debatable siya kasi it is seen as a gray zone tactic na ito. Para bang kaya siya gray zone kasi medyo gray area. Hindi mo malaman kung this is considered as a form of an armed attack at this point, no? And if you notice sa statements na nilalabas ng Chinese government, they are not acknowledging the use of the laser kasi when a reporter asked the foreign ministry spokesman kung ano ang reaction ng Chinese government. Nag-file ng diplomatic protest ang Manila with regards to the pointing of the laser. Parang ang sagot ng yan, our forces, are rather referring to the Chinese Coast Guard, they acted in a professional and restrained way, not in the manner that you framed your question, referring to the use of the laser. So that itself is an issue kung bakit hindi nila ina-acknowledge.
Professional restrained use of laser, the laser. Commodore Tariela and Rear Admiral Ong, I wanted to ask you that same question. Then why don't they do that to the BRP Sierra Madre? No? Why don't they point lasers at the BRP Sierra Madre? Why don't they also water cannon the Sierra Madre? But I'm going to ask you to answer those questions when we come back after this very quick break. Stay tuned. This is Politics as Usual. Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual.
It's called optical distractors, which is, an escalating use of these kinds of technology short of war. Let us stop being meek, no? Huwag tayo magpapakumbaba. This is the time for wolf warrior diplomacy, no? Which means really kick ass and let us go on the offensive because paulit-ulit nyo nang ginagawa to, sobra ng abuso ninyo.
My question right before the break to Commodore Tariela of the Coast Guard and retired Rear Admiral Rommel Ong, kung ginagawa nila ito sa Coast Guard vessel, sa fishing vessel, why don't they do this to the BRP Sierra Madre? Commodore Tariela.
Well, for me, as a Coast Guard officer, I would still wait for the response of Admiral Ong first.
Okay.
Want to weigh in muna dito sa internet ng Armed Forces of the Philippines. So I'll just wait for the response of Admiral Ong.
Rear Admiral Ong, kayo na daw muna.
Sige, 2 points lang, no? Number 1, it doesn't make tactical sense. If you're running a blockade, then the objective mo is the escort ships or the supply ships, hindi yung Sierra Madre. Second point, and dito I may be wrong, no, but the way the Chinese contextualize yung scenario sa Ayungin, they lay claim that they have sovereignty over the waters around Ayungin Shoal, around Ayungin Shoal. And I think they never laid claim to inside the shoal or yung Sierra Madre, precisely because Sierra Madre has extension of sovereignty, being a commissioned vessel. So that means if they lay claim to the waters around Ayungin Shoal, that will now define, kumbaga, that lays the predicate for yung rules of engagement that they will employ around the shoal. So kung sinasabi nilang they have sovereignty over those waters, medyo restrictive yung rules of engagement nila, and that is where the lasers come in, yung unmasking of yung guns, yung close distance approach to our vessels. Kumaga, they follow a playbook from the point of view of yung non-lethal options, non-lethal actions. We may debate on whether yung laser is an act of kumbaga aggressive action or what not. But we have to look at it from their lens, their perspective. Maybe from their perspective, yung laser is not it's not a lethal weapon. It's a non-lethal system. So that means nasa menu nila of options to use in counteracting yung activities natin around the show.
Or so it's not it is a non-lethal, but it is a blinding siguro blinding laser weapon. The question now, sir, to both you, Rear Admiral Ong and Commodore Tariela, what now? Because no amount of diplomatic protests, no amount of note verbals, no amount of summoning to Malacañang, no amount of hotlines. I mean, we have that hotline since, hindi ba, David, 2017, no? And I mean, things just keep happening again and again and again. So what now? Rear Admiral Ong.
Sige, ako muna. For so long, we've taken the diplomatic and the legal approach to this. Of course, nagmamanifest yan sa diplomatic approach in terms of yung protest. Sa legal approach, we always say that we cite the provisions of the arbitral ruling, UNCLOS,
Which they don't
and everything that
recognize
we have
anyway.
that we have legal that is legally within our EZ. But unfortunately, China is not a respecter of international law. Okay? Kumbaga, hindi tayo nagtutugma eh. Yung actions nila already signifies that they do not respect international law. Ibig sabihin, they only respect the wisdom of hard power or military power in this case. So ang ano rito is, as I said earlier, they are running a quasi-blockade. So a blockade means kailangan natin i-match yung blockade with similar presence dun sa area na yon. Kasi right now, they have established, to me, they have already established sea control around the waters of Ayungin Shoal. So ang logical response would be to either restore our sea control of the waters around the shoal or to contest yung sea control nila. And the only way you can contest that is to match yung presence nila with presence natin. Hindi pwede yung pasulput-sulput lang tayo eh, yung tuwing resupply ka lang nandun, then alis ka na. Kasi if we keep doing that, we are actually surrendering, in a sense, pag alis mo ng barko natin, we were actually surrendering yung sovereignty natin over those waters or sovereign rights over those waters. Kasi hindi permanent yung presence natin. Yung Sierra Madre is already kumbaga in this context, kumbaga you look at Sierra Madre parang yung Alamo sa Texas.
Fort Alamo.
Na surrounded na siya eh. Okay? So we need to reinforce that. So ibig sabihin, we need to have our presence back doon sa ano. It doesn't mean makipagbanggaan tayo, makipag-away tayo sa China. But we have to manifest yung ano natin, yung will natin to defend that area or that shoal and Sierra Madre through maritime presence.
Commodore Tariela, the Coast Guard released a statement saying that you will continue to show presence there in the Ayungin Shoal, and for that matter, Philippine territorial waters. Can you do that every day? Can you match China's presence there?
Yeah, Pia, before I answer your question, I think I already have two questions na utang sa'yo, no?
Yes.
The first was, bakit ang BRP Madre ay hindi ginagamitan ng the same amount of force that is being used against the Philippine Coast Guard vessels? No, now I'm going to answer this as an academic, not as a Coast Guard officer. No, I think the reason why the Chinese government is not using the same amount of force that is employing against the Philippine Coast Guard vessel, it's because at some point they look at it as a status quo. You know, the BRP Madre ran aground way back in the 90s, and this is something na alam nila na ngayon, if they're going to use the force like harassment that they're doing to those vessels that are circling around Ayungin Shoal, this is something that will project a negative image sa kanila. Kaya nga every time that they are harassing the government vessels that are patrolling surrounding Ayungin Shoal, sinasabi lang nila na they are reacting on those vessels that enters their Chinese claim territory. You know?
Okay.
So for them, that's not the status quo. What is status quo is that Ayungin Shoal is there's a grounded Philippine Navy vessel there, which is BRP Madre. And just like what I said before, they're just waiting for the right time na mawala na to, masira na tong barko na to. And that's the time na mababago uli ang status quo. Now, the second question is, what is the difference of our responses? How are we going to change and alter the behavior of China? No? If you're going to look at the response of the Philippine government in the past years, the only difference in the past months is that, especially this January, actually, we have been exposing the aggressive behavior and the bullying activities of China in the past weeks. No, from Ayungin Shoal fishermen na Filipino fisherman na hinabol ng China Coast Guard. That's the first news that came out this early part of the year. The second one is this military-grade laser na ginamit sa Philippine Coast Guard vessel. I think the difference of approach that we can change the behavior of China is to continuously expose what they're doing in the West Philippine Sea. I think the gray zone approach of China, the only way that we can counter it is for us to expose this bullying behavior. You have to go back to our experience in 2021 when the Philippine government under President Duterte and our chairman of WPS was General Esperon. He exposed there were almost 200 Chinese maritime militia in Julian, Felipe. When it was made public, everybody was aware. The U.S. international community also responded, made comments about it. A few days after, those Chinese maritime militia left. Even the Philippine Coast Guard vessels were deployed, showing videos that those Chinese maritime militia are already leaving Julian, Felipe. So to answer your question, I think the only way that we can respond to this bullying behavior of China is for us to continuously expose this. We should not allow ourselves to be silent and just be reliant on diplomatic protests. We need to lead the narrative that the Chinese are doing this, and this is wrong, and this against the international law, and they are violating our sovereign rights in our own exclusive economic zone.
All right, continuously expose this, but does that mean that you'll be able to be there every single day? More from our guests when we return. This is Politics as Usual. Welcome back to Politics as Usual. Twin questions first to Commodore Tariela of the Coast Guard. Commodore Tariela, so can you be there every single day? And the answer is only a yes or a no. And at the same time, the other question is, do the hotlines work at all? So yes or no lang?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yes.
Yes, you can be there every single day, and no, the hotlines don't work.
Yes.
Okay. Commodore Rear Admiral Ong, can, syempre when we talk about the Coast Guard being there every day in those waters, syempre ang isipin natin itong, should we have a credible defense posture? Isn't that what the AFP modernization is all about? A credible defense posture that will command respect from other countries.
Yes, I agree. We should have a credible defense posture, particularly with respect to the West Philippine Sea.
And do the hotlines work at all? There was one, David, a few years ago, yung Coast Guard to Coast Guard, hindi ba? And now there is a Ministry of Foreign Affairs to Department of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines, a president-to-president hotline. Are these working? Is that the solution we need for this? Rear Admiral
Well, in
Ong.
theory, yes. In theory, a hotline should be a confidence-building measure and also a crisis management, protocol. But it takes two to tango, kumbaga. If the other side is not answering the phone, then what is the hotline for? So may problema ka na doon. Pangalawa, when you have that hotline, kumbaga there should be transparency and yung reciprocity in that engagement. Kung may problema, tumawag tayo, they should respond. Same like manner, kung sila yung tatawag, we should respond. But if it's a one-sided event or activity, then it defeats the purpose of the hotline.
So, Rear Admiral Ong, if you say a hotline should be a confidence-building measure and a crisis management measure, so let me rephrase the question. Do the hotlines build confidence, and do the hotlines manage crisis?
In theory, yes, if both parties involved in that hotline are sincere with the concept.
But on the ground and on the water, do they build confidence? Do they manage the crisis?
No.
No.
The hotline is designed at the upper level. It's not at the tactical level. Yun yung ng hotline. What will happen if there's an encounter at sea, normally yung two opposing ships will contact each other by radio and try to convey, either to issue a warning or to convey a message or to signify yung intention nila. So you will have the two bridge crews talking to each other, trying to find ways and means how to address yung situation nila. as much as we have this, kumbaga, galit tayo dito sa Chinese Coast Guard and the Chinese Navy, I would like to presume that they are also professionally run. And when I say professionally run, those manning those ships, those commanding those ships, know their job and know the limitations ng roles nila.
Commodore Tariela, siguro a very brief question na lang, very brief answer. Nung nangyari itong insidenteng ito nung Feb 6, nagamit ba yung hotline? Nagkontakan ba?
No.
Na, hindi. So, would you say
No,
that
ma'am.
the hotline is useful or useless?
No, ma'am, because the hotline mechanism for this administration was already was no longer being considered. The hotline mechanism was already elevated from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China and the Department of Foreign Affairs.
So, syempre, mahirap yon. Tactical kanina, ang term na ginamit ni Rear Admiral on tactical. So, nagkaka-laser, nagtuturoan ng laser, you're pointing laser at each other, or nag-water cannon. Alam nga naman, sandali lang po, tatawag po kami sa DFA namin. Can that happen? Parang hindi, no? Anyway, sir, ubus na yung oras natin. So, very brief, 10-second to 15-second final words from each of you. Let's begin with Commodore Tariela.
Thank you, Ms. Pia. The Philippine Coast Guard, despite of the danger that it brings in patrolling our waters in our exclusive economic zone, as what our commandant has stated, the Philippine Coast Guard will continuously and extensively patrol our exclusive economic zone. We're going to, despite of our limited number of vessels, despite of the size of our vessels, we're going to ensure that our interest is protected, and we're going to ensure that the Filipino fishermen will also be protected against harassment of other foreign coast guards.
Thank you, Commodore Tariela. Rear Admiral Ong, sir, very briefly, please.
Number one, siguro, we should be aware of what is our national interest in these things, particularly the West Philippine Sea. And everybody should be on the same page, lalo na those within the bureaucracy. Pangalawa, we need to find better ways how to establish credibility of our security or defense in that part of the West Philippine Sea. Obviously, what we have been doing in the past and what we're doing now doesn't work. Kasi may lasering na event na nangyari.
Yes, sir.
So there's something wrong with what we've been doing, and I think we need to take a hard look at maybe where we can do better.
All right.
Thank
you very much to our guests tonight, Commodore Tariela, Rear Admiral Ong, and David Santos here in the studio. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in even Viber groups and risk warfare, digital or otherwise. But we can talk about it here at this table on this show, your weekly political appointment fix. Politics as usual. I'm Pia Hontiveros. See you back here next Wednesday, 8 p.m.